right, guys. Looks like I guess my internet dropped out. Came back on. We're live. All right. I'm gonna give it like 2 more minutes here. Let people finish coming into the session here, and then we'll get into these charts.
ก็สวัสดีนะครับพี่ๆเพื่อนๆทุกคนนะครับก็วันนี้ก็มาอยู่ในช่องของ e-money นะครับผมวันนี้เดี๋ยวเรามาดูการวิเคราะห์นะครับของคุณพิคัสโซกันนะครับว่าตัว Bitcoin มันจะไปในทิศทางไหนนะครับเดี๋ยวเรามาดูไปพร้อมๆกันเลยผมก็ยังไม่ได้ดูเหมือนกันนะครับ
Such a global community. I love it. People from all over the world. I mean, crypto is definitely disrupting and changing paradigms, right? Michigan, Estonia, Dubai, Argentina, thank you, Estonia, Cali, New York, Connecticut, India, Brazil, London, Thailand, Italy. I have to look. I think at this point, if we drop to like 60, that we're going to go a little bit lower. South of France, welcome first time. Thailand, New Hampshire, Estonia. All right, guys, I'm going to give it just 1 more minute. Let people jump on. See if we can't get over 500 people.
Hi, from Thailand. ประเทศไทยช่วงนี้มีเริ่มดังนะตอนนี้ พิคัสโซเริ่มพูดถึงประเทศไทยตอนนี้แต่ว่าประเทศไทยของเรานี่ไม่ธรรมดานะครับ
Crazy little sell-off this morning on this one exchange on Kraken. I don't know. After all these years, I'm not even exactly sure how you pronounce that. I've always said Kraken. But yeah, crazy sell-off on the 1-minute chart here on this exchange this morning. I mean, all the exchanges kind of had a little bit of a push down, but somebody unloaded 800 coins here in a 1-minute candle. 803 coins in the volume, right? In a 1-minute candle, and the market pretty well absorbed that. I mean, 800 coins is not that much, but the market pretty much absorbed that sell-off. So it's really interesting to see where this wants to go from here. All right. So let's move over to my normal charts that I use here. Let's see the differences here. Which one gives us a cleaner chart? I'm going to start with a 4-hour. Let's look at this here. All right. This is Bitfinex. Bitstamp. They're all relative. Look the same. Only Kraken really sold down that low. You can use basically any of these charts today. I just think that one of them's going to be a little cleaner than the other. What the usual here Bitstamp that I usually.
มีเสียงพัดลมนะโอเคเดี๋ยวปิดพัดลม
So that's some markups here from last session with this resistance zone. Okay, let's get some things out of here. All right, and I had talked about in the last session that if we push up towards 67.5, 69.5 area, that we're hitting like Fibonacci extension resistance. So it would make sense. I even had this still drawn here. It would make sense that if this wave up, right, is complete, that we're gonna see some sort of maybe week 10-day move at the most. I mean, what are we looking at here? We'll look at Fibonacci time in a second, but 20 days seems too far away. So maybe something where we get a little bit of a correction here. Like what I'm looking at now is to see if this wants to continue up, we have a little bit of a trend that we're working on, right? That you can see here. Right. Now we also bounced again on that trend, which is just about at this 4-hour 50 EMA.
ปิดเสียงไหม
So as of now, we're like still holding this impulsive wave, right? I want you to kind of like recognize the way that I look at this in a sense. This wave that started here, okay, is now trying to make a move up, probably running into resistance relatively soon. But at some point, that wave is most likely going to stop its impulse and do a little bit of a correction, right? Because there's a bigger structure playing out. If we kind of look at this, let's just delete everything here real quick. If we kind of look at this like this, we have this wave that was made, and then the correction, and then another wave that's being made. So we may be getting some sort of like A, B, C move where we get another retracement down and the market has to stabilize. Or maybe we get a pullback like this and this turns into a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Elliott wave. Either way, this move that we're in here, okay, this part from here up, it should be getting rather exhausted or getting close to being exhausted. The signs of that is I'll be watching for it to break whatever like intraday trend it's riding on. So you can see here, it is kind of still holding trend. All right, even though that trend is extremely steep, when we bump it down to lower time frames, right? Let's say like a 15-minute, we can see that since this impulsive wave was initiated back here, we're still basically holding this trend that we've been on. So the way that we play this at this point is if it wants to hold right here, we work off of these lows and we try to catch whatever move it wants to continue. But we realize that it's probably running into some sort of resistance there around close to 70, I would say 69.5. It's going to run into some resistance there where that could be where this wave gets exhausted. All right, so let's just mark out like 69.5. Now the reason I'm using 69.5 really is because we go back up a couple more time frames here. And then we just take like this correction wave, right? And maybe we look for some extensions above for some targets. That's more or less from here. This is more or less right here, the 2.272 extension. So what I'm doing is I'm taking like from this high to this low of the wave, the correction, and looking at where it could extend above. If I want to use the fib in that way, I get around the 2.272 there. If I want to use the fib and go back to the base of the wave, it kind of gives me about 67.5 for a golden ratio, right? So right in here, there's some extension resistance. No matter how you want to draw it, there's not one way I would say that's more accurate than the other. You're just going to find with Fibonacci's, you use them as they seem fit. So if this thing continues at this point here, we want to know that if we try to squeeze in, let's go back to the 15-minute, right? If we try to squeeze in based upon this thing bouncing on the trend line again, at this point, we would want to have to work off of this low, right? So basically around 61.8. So it's rather high. It's too high. It's about 1,300 pips high. So from that low, so it's a little bit risky there. Maybe work off of this low right here, about 62,350 or so. So that's about 700 pips or so of risk. But if we're going to work off of this, continuation of trend here, we have to keep in mind that we may see some targets relatively soon up in this area before the whole thing breaks down. Okay, so remember, this is a running wave on like the mid time frames, right? That's running into some extension resistance, and if it wants to give us the opportunity to continue to play it, then okay, so be it. But we have to remember where we're at in that, right? Like it may get exhausted a little bit higher up, or this may be the exhaustion. This may be the beginning of the breakdown. This is the thing when you're trading. There's unknowns, right? Like this thing, until this trend line right here, I would say breaks, we're not sure if this thing's going to continue to do a deeper retrace, or it's going to continue to play this trend line. So that's why I'm saying, like, if we do try to squeeze in here based upon it bouncing off of this trend, then we got to know that, all right, well, maybe up in here is where we look for targets, 5,000-6,000 pips away or something like that, because it really needs to get through those high 60s before it, continues higher. So it makes sense that it may test there, but then roll over, right? So if it does roll over, so if it goes higher and rolls over, meaning like breaks down, either way, I'd be looking for the same place for it to fall back to, okay, which is basically right around a 382 retracement. So let's just put this in here. So if this thing runs a little higher, that's my 382. If this thing is already exhausted, there's my 382. So I have about the same amount of a gap in there. So let's just say here to maybe here. Yeah, so this is basically where I would look at my buy zone, right? And just kind of just explain this real quick. I'll make this buy zone green. All right, so what I'm drawing out here is saying basically, all right, if this right here was indeed the top, okay, and it breaks this trend line, all right, if that was indeed the top and it breaks that trend line, then I would be looking for a retracement based upon that being the top, and saying that the 382 could fall down towards 57 or so. All right, if this thing wants to extend a little bit higher and then break down, then I'd be looking for about 58.6. But either way, it's coming to trying to maybe back test. If this breaks down at all, it's going to try to back test the point of what? Previous weakness. Okay, we can see right here, right in there was a point of weakness. This whole market had rallied up, kept making higher highs, broke the trend a little bit, put in a lower high right in here, and then once that lower high broke basically this little trend right in there, that was it. That was the flush that led down into the extended correction. So this is a very important point in the market to back test a little bit. All right, so it would not surprise me at all if we saw prices back towards 57 to 58.5, like in this little zone right in here. All right, but there's no evidence that we're going there just yet. You just have to like play this as it comes, knowing that if this thing snaps and breaks down, right here is probably where we're gonna really want to see the buyers step in, right? If it wants to hold this trend, then we may have to squeeze in right around 63 and try to run it up towards 69 or so. Okay, and just keep continuation with the trend. All right. So let's see if everybody got that pretty much here. Still connected, right? All right. Yeah, exactly. 57, Puerto Rico, Nigeria. All right. I don't think we're gonna get a hard pullback, but I think that that's the pullback I think that we potentially could get a little bit of. All right. Let's see. Good. If anybody has any questions about that, go ahead, drop it in the chat. Did it drop to 8K? I saw somebody posting some chart that this thing dropped to 8K somewhere. Where did that happen? Let's see. I don't know if I have it up here. Let's see. I was looking at it earlier. Let's take a look at that. Insane. That's just insane. Let's see, like a 1 minute chart. Thin books. Somebody trying to dump some liquidity in some really thin books. 579 coins. Look at that. 579 coins dropped. Somebody just market sold and dumped, and they didn't have the liquidity. So obviously the market absorbed that pretty well. Yeah, I wouldn't be looking at that as like a sign that we're going to 8,000 or anything like that. But that's insane. That's how people get liquidated. And I mean, but you know what? Once you see something like this has already transpired, like it's already happened, then you can kind of be like, all right, well, we're flushing out a little bit, but we should be, getting back on track and have less of those kind of moves happening as we go forward. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's good to just get that stuff out of your system and then let the trend resume. Let's go back here. All right, so it looks like right now, like the market wants to try to work on this trend a little bit more. So let me show you guys a couple things I'm looking at here to, how to. The thing is now that we've broken above the all-time high, the market's moving so fast that it's better to give the analysis of what I'm looking for next in these live sessions, rather than sending a message out with a chart that may change within 10 minutes. It's really it's moving quite fast. Let me tune this in a little bit closer here. All right, so now that we've identified, right, I'm going to show you how I do this. I've already identified here on the 4 hour, right, we're semi-holding this trend. We've had quite a flush out this morning, but we're still holding that trend more or less. So now if I take it down to these lower time frames, like a 3-minute time frame, you can kind of see what it's trying to do here. Like if this was indeed the bottom of that sell-off, right, what's the market have to do here now? It has to like balance out, start to put in some higher lows, maybe get back above average and try to work its way back up, right? So this is where on these lower time frames we kind of observe the baby steps, but there's not, this thing is so extended here. Remember, we're in this 4 hour running wave that's getting close to this big resistance, right? So this thing is so extended here that entering in here to go up here is very, very high risk, okay? But if that's what the market is giving us, that's all the market's going to give us, right? It's way more productive in a sense to wait to see if we can't get a breakdown to these levels. But whether those levels come or not, we don't know. You know what I mean? That's the thing with Bitcoin. Like once the trend picks up and it starts to run, it runs. It kind of forces you to have that kind of fear of missing out. So you just kind of like watch what unfolds on these lower time frames. We know that we've run into basically a trend. Now we see, if we see over, let's say the next, let's say by the new day, right? So let's say by the new day, which is right here, I'm going to put a moment in time right here where the new daily candle starts. Okay, so right about here is where the new daily candle starts, right there, all right? So that means between now and when the new daily candle opens, this thing has to figure itself out in here, okay? Now, if I'm looking at it from this perspective on the 3-minute time frame and looking at how much like chart it could fill here before the new daily candle, I also want to consider what the daily picture looks like, right? So let's look at that now. Okay, the daily picture, we can see we got a pretty strong downward candle here that basically engulfed the previous day. Okay, now that doesn't mean that the trend is over. We also had that here. Okay, we also had that here, that, you know, where the price came down and engulfed the previous day. So we have to keep, now you can see that trend a little bit nicer here on the daily when it all kind of comes into these lows, right? Here, 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 and now here again. So it's still riding on this trend, but it's kind of like in the danger zone of maybe where the trend is exhausted, right? So this is really where we have to see. Let's look at the momentum here on the daily. Definitely cracked down, definitely waning down, definitely waning down here. Look at this RSI real quick. Okay. Now, if the new day opens, right, and this RSI wants to pivot off of this little trend and just kind of work its way back up towards these levels, then that's an indication that we're going to hold this and try to, you know, put in a couple more days pushing towards 70. Okay, we have to really see, at least for me to want to enter this again right now, I have to really see how this opens up the day. Is this how's this going to look in this period of time here between now and the new daily open, right? In this period of trade, right in here. What's this thing going to do? Is it going to wash down further? Is it going to start putting some higher lows? Is it going to get back above trend here? Is it going to start to turn, like let's say this little level that it found support on before? Is it going to try to turn that back into support now? If so, then it might want to run a little bit higher. You know, so I would say we're going to work this trend until this trend says, "Nah, we're exhausted." And if the trend says it's exhausted, then we're looking for that, you know, that deeper retracement to 57 or 50. But until this trend cracks, the market may really want to hold on to like 62, 63 because now it's made a new all-time high. So you gotta look at it like this. Set this right here. You gotta look like this. It has made a new all-time high here, and here is the previous all-time high. So now we're coming back down, and we're kind of like testing this little area in here. Now we may find some temporary support, and like I said, we go a little bit higher over here. But overall, it seems to me like this market may want to test back.
Yeah, exactly. 57. All right. I don't think we're gonna get hard.
Huh?
That's
เสียงแทรก อ้าว
เขาไปวัดกันหมดแล้วเขาไปวัดกัน
โอเค หลุดแล้วนะ
เพื่อเอ็มอันนี้มันแกะหายไป